Hari Om. So, on a less philosophical note, what we're going to speak about is fundamentally in search of me. This is a very important quest. In fact, it's what's driving all of us throughout our entire life. The search for me. And I'd like to do something. I just want to mention a few things, and what I'd like to ask of you is if you would kindly close your eyes, because I'm hoping that it will aid or help in considering a couple of these points that I am going to speak of. So I would also like you to think of what I'm about to speak of in relation to, we should do it in relation to ourself. Of course, when we close our eyes, we can hear sounds around us. We may become aware of our breathing or even our heartbeat. But something I'm very conscious of is the fact that I exist. I am sitting here, or existing here in this darkness with my eyes closed. And this is actually very helpful because it helps me withdraw from this world. I spend my whole day and half the night constantly caught up in everything around me. And yet the things that are disturbing me or driving me lie deep within me. What are the core desires or needs that I have? What is at the forefront? If we get past the clutter and the noise, the chatter of the mind, what are the things that I seek probably more deeply than anything? One of these is the desire for happiness. Many of us as children would hear or read fairy tales or stories that ended with, and they lived happily ever after. The wedding photos, the ideal vacation, being somewhere very special, evokes in us this desire, the desire for happiness and to be happy eternally, forever. Another great need that rises to the surface is my desire for love. the desire to both love and to be loved. I also desire some permanent position or stability, a home, a place of safeness, of shelter, of comfort, of kindness, where I am not drawn into any conflict. I desire this place. It is a desire for stability. It is a desire for happiness. It is a desire for permanence. So if you wish, you can remain with your eyes closed, or you may open them as you choose. But I'm hoping that we are all in agreement on these things because they are a common denominator. What is it that threatens these needs or desires and disturbs this safe and happy place that we so much desire? What are the things that threaten or disturb or shake or cause doubts in us? One is, of course, not finding or experiencing the fear of not finding this happiness that we so much desire and hope for. Another is not finding or having doubts that I may ever be able to find this love that I seek, that I will be able to find that person whom I can love for always and ever, and who will also love me. Part of what threatens me in this regard is also my own doubt sometimes of my worthiness to be loved. Something that threatens my desire for a home and for permanence is the fact that in this world, everything ends. Everything deteriorates or is destroyed. And so this is a big problem for me. You know, these things that we are speaking about require a great deal of honesty to be willing to go to these places and to examine my heart in this way. But it is actually very beneficial from a spiritual point of view. If I carefully consider these things which I desire or seek within my heart of hearts, I will discover something quite extraordinary. That I am actually seeking that which is eternal in a dimensional world that by nature is both impermanent and imperfect. So, if that is the case, then why do we do this? Why do we seek out these things in a place that cannot deliver them? This is a really big and important question. The yogis understood that the reason I vainly try to find such goodness, such happiness, and such love in a place where it cannot be found is intimately tied to the false ideas of who I think I am. The truth is that our core needs or desires, they arise from our eternal spiritual identity or self. But our search to fulfill these needs is very much tied to ideas of who I am. What do I mean by that? Well, I have this idea that the temporary body and mind which I possess, I have this idea that it is me. I don't just think of it that way, I am totally absorbed in acting on that platform. And so when my senses desire to smell, to taste, to hear, to experience things, the senses of these bodies, then I wrongly think that if I pursue and fulfill these desires, that I will find the happiness that I am seeking, which comes from a very deep and wonderful place within. I falsely think that the labels which are attached to this temporary body are who I actually am. So if my body is of a particular ethnic extraction or race, if my body is male or female, if it is of a particular age, then what I will do is, thinking that these labels are who I am, I will seek to fulfill these desires that arise from this idea that these labels are me. On a third level, and something that is becoming increasingly pervasive in the world today, I will intensely identify with my desires, the desires which manifest within my mind, and I will give myself labels based on these desires. But according to all of the yogic scriptures and text, this is ignorance. And there is this long-standing formula: ignorance equals pain. If I feel and experience in my life pain and suffering, it will always be because I have accepted something that is untrue as being true. This is a wonderful spiritual principle, and we cannot get into it in great detail here tonight, but I am just passing over it for your consideration. When I become overwhelmed with this ignorance, accepting the false to be true, I must necessarily, it is unavoidable, that I will experience all varieties of unhappiness and suffering that arises from this. There are many examples. I'm just going to mention two very briefly for you to consider on. I saw this interview one time of a very wonderful young woman. She was about 29. She was from Utah in the US, and she was a mother of 3 children. At 29 years of age, her and her husband were in a light plane crash. The plane had just stopped to be refueled, and it crashed on taking off, so the amount of fire was horrific. And she speaks about remembering trying to get out of the plane, inhaling fire, feeling her skin melting and just dripping off. She was badly burnt, 3rd-degree burns over 80% of her body. And the area that was worst affected was her face. She was put into a medically induced coma for 3 months while they attempted to do reconstructive surgery, and before that, of course, a lot of skin grafting. She had deeply loved her children, who were very young. I think the eldest girl was about 8 at the time, and the next one was about 5, and then there was a very young child. And they had gone to live with her sister during these 3 months. And for the children, of course, 3 months are like everything. The youngest child had begun to address her auntie as mummy. Eventually, when the children were allowed to come and see her, and she had had some of the bandages removed from her face, her daughter, the eldest one, came in first, and she absolutely recoiled. She was shocked, she was scared, she was afraid, and wanted to just run. And Stephanie was calling out to her and saying, "It's me, Mummy. It's me, your mummy." And the girl is just like terrified and not accepting that to be a reality. And similar thing happened with the boy. And it took many, many months before the children could come around to accepting that this was their mother. For me, this is like really a heartbreaking, a very sad story. But it is very much grounded in these false notions that this body I have on is me, my self-worth, my lovableness. Everything related to me is going to be judged solely on a physical appearance. This is one of the most unfortunate things that can happen to people in this world. It is actually a great source of unhappiness, and it is played out in so many different ways. Every day, every minute of the day, by hundreds of millions and billions of people. For the yogi, this is a source of enormous unhappiness that there is this profound and unnecessary sadness that everybody must go through in this life, even all the way up to the end when one encounters the experience of death. It is unnecessarily painful for most people, and there are moments, of some happiness and some good times, but things tend to never really end that well. See, the reality is that you are an eternal, glorious, special spiritual being who is temporarily residing within this body. We are in fact like the driver of a vehicle. But if we confuse the vehicle with the driver, this is the formula, not only for unhappiness, but it makes it so we cannot reclaim our eternal right to be existing in a state of great spiritual happiness and spiritual love. In the Bhagavad Gita, which many of you have probably heard of, this is the first and the foundational principle, and that is espoused, this knowledge of how I am an eternal spiritual being. This statement that Ivishwara mentioned earlier, Aham Brahmasmi, I am an eternal spiritual being. This is a great truth. And our quest should be again to find myself. That is why in the beginning I said this is about in search of me. This should be the great focus of our life. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, in the second pada or chapter, the 25th verse, he states that when ignorance is destroyed, the identification of the self with matter, that is the identification of the living being with the body, it ceases, and this is called liberation. So one of my spiritual teachers, Jagad Guru Siddhaswarupananda, he wonderfully stated, the individual soul or atma can be compared to a diamond whose value is not appreciated because it is covered over. A beautiful diamond may lie deep underground, covered by layers of dirt and rock, and though it exists in darkness, it is still a diamond. But because it is so covered up, its intrinsic beauty and value go unrealized. When I realize my spiritual identity, who I really am, then my view of this world, my view of other living beings, and my view of myself dramatically changes. And this permanently alters how I will live and the type of choices that I will make in my life. So true happiness, fulfillment, and the awakening of spiritual love, it is not only possible to be experienced in this lifetime, but will come about by sincerely taking to this meditational practice upon spiritual sound, mantra meditation. So I would like to, unless there's any question, I was going to invite you to chant. Was that okay, or serious food for thought? Anybody have a question? What shall I chant? Om Hari Om. Huh?
Laila has a question. She's not too sure how to ask it.
What's that?
Laila here has a question. She's not too sure how to ask it.
Okay. It works better with the mouth. I just don't do sign language. I'm sorry. No. Firstly, these matters that we're talking about are really important. And because of this, in this regard, there's no such thing as a dumb question or a stupid, there's nothing. Any inquiry into this most important subject is really wonderful. Sometimes we have an idea and we don't know how to shape it in words, so just give it a blast and we'll manage. Unless you're too shy, it's all right. You don't have to. Don't be bullied by Dave here. Dave's a big bully. Huh?
You are a teacher, and I've heard that you're feeling that
you're the lowest.
Huh?
You feel that you're very low and you're unqualified.
Me? I don't feel it. I know it to be a fact.
how can you know that you are a teacher?
How do I know I'm a teacher? I don't think I'm a teacher.
But if you don't think
I am, well, that's because all these people ask me to come do this, so okay, I'll do it. But I have had the great fortune of having this wonderful association of great spiritual teachers, very saintly persons. And because what they have given me is of such great value and has affected my life so much, I have a duty and obligation to them to try and repeat and share based on what I have heard and also from my personal understanding. So it's okay, we're all the same. We're in the same boat. I've been lucky, and so I'm sharing the luck. Is that okay?
I just wonder because I've heard there's not people who try to be teachers, but they're not really.
Yeah. The great Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he described that there are basically three things that really get in the way of a person's spiritual life. The goal of spiritual life is never to become a teacher. If that's your goal, you've got your head in a very dark place. An orifice that's rather smelly. Seriously. And one should be very cautious of who they listen to. There are more people that probably want to get something from you than actually give you something of enormous value. So we must ourselves learn how to make judgments. We should not just accept things. Somebody shows up in some robes and a cool haircut, whether that's the Rasta look or the shaved head or curly locks, whatever, I don't know. And they might look the part. In the Vedas, they taught people, you must learn to see with your ears. Don't believe your eyes. Even if somebody has been around for years teaching, doesn't mean that they should be listened to and followed. We must seek the direction of the Lord within our own heart in that regard. There will be three things that really interfere with a person's spiritual growth, and it becomes very evident in people who may assume a title of being teacher. One will be the desire for wealth, to do it as a livelihood or try and get money off people. The second one is to seek to exploit people, whether that's in terms of sexually or mentally dominating them, or just so many different ways. And the third big trap is the desire to have followers. These three things will crush a person's spiritual life. But we are called upon to speak and to share what we have received. If people choose to listen and to accept that, then we are very thankful. But nobody is required to consider someone else a teacher or anything like that. Is that okay? Yes.
Seems to me when you speak of a spiritual self, it leads to a dangerous tendency to just perpetuate separation. That this idea of a self versus understanding its true nature. Because we're so imbued with a sense of a self as being separate.
Yeah, I missed a few bits and pieces of that, but I will try to answer based on what I think you're asking. You know, it's not, if a person is overly obsessed with the body, that is a fallen condition. If somebody is overly adverse to the body, that is also not a healthy spiritual condition. There must be the recognition of the fact that we are embodied beings, and one should take great care of not only the internal but the external. One should be appreciative not only of the internal but also of the external. But what we see in the material world is there is a total obsession with the body and the demands and the desires and the needs of the body and mind, and the spiritual being within is completely neglected. That is unhealthy. There is a place in the middle where there is a wonderful balance, and this is the position that any real practitioner of yoga should seek. Does that answer the question, or? Huh?
Because, for example, you said that we are a body. We do have to deal with, the fact that we're a body. This is how we.
The fact that we are
embodied.
Embodied, yes.
The senses we have.
Yes.
The delusion comes when you identify yourself with what happens not only in the body, but in the mind.
Yes.
And isn't it incumbent upon us to understand ourselves as we are, to look very hard to where do you find the me when you start to
Where do you find
me?
me?
When you start to
Yeah. This is actually the object.
This is where you start.
This is the object of meditation. The proper understanding from yoga teachings is you have two bodies. The living being is embodied by two bodies. One is a gross body, and the other one is subtle in nature. And that is constituted by the mind, what is called buddhi or intelligence, and what's called ahankara, the false concepts of oneself. So there are two types of covering. And coming to actually experience the reality of my spiritual identity for most of us is going to be a journey that really takes some time. There is no need. Can I also say that enlightenment is not like one day you're here and then the next day there's a lightning bolt strikes you and bam, you're over there. It's kind of like a little bit more like a dimmer switch, where you go from darkness and you click it on and then you're gradually turning it. And as the amount of light is radiating, things become a lot clearer. You can see everything. Enlightenment and self-realization is that same kind of experience. They also liken it to taking an iron rod and placing it within fire. If the fire is hot enough, eventually the iron rod takes on all of the qualities of fire. Instead of being rigid and cold and heavy and dull, it now emits light, it radiates heat, and becomes very malleable. In a similar manner, the process of spiritual enlightenment, seeking my true spiritual identity, as that awakening happens, there will be a corresponding transformation of my body and mind, and that it takes on more of a, if I can use a term this way, more of a spiritualized characteristic. This is a big subject and a wonderful subject. So what were we doing?
Is there time for one more question?
I don't know. We're in overtime, so it's probably about $5 now. No.
I don't know if I'll be able to word the question correctly, but you speak about, taking on the sort of aspects of life where, desire and all of that, and, it's like we have a divine purpose, and then you get to the real world and there's all these things that complicate
Yes.
expectations. And it's quite easy to, and it's because I experience it, every week, where you can come here and, you can chant and experience the peace, the divineness. But then you go back to the real world and all the real expectations.
Well, the real world or the false world?
The false
world.
No,
I'm joking. No, but I understand the question.
I've not finished the question.
Okay.
Yeah. So what
My apologies.
What I'm trying to ask is, is it possible, so when you do take on the cloak of the false world, is it possible to still live in that false world, because, still live in that false world and find an equation where it works? Because I feel it's impossible to...
No, it's what it is. There's nothing inherently wrong with the material energy. Material energy in the body is not inherently evil or bad or wrong. Our problem is our own consciousness, how we look upon it, and how we choose to try and use it or utilize it. So this internal transformation is not about trying to amputate the body or cut, you know what I mean? No, it is about coming to the point of seeing everything with such clarity that your spiritual life is not an endeavor that you do in a cave. It may be as you are making code or selling something or sweeping a street. It's the consciousness that a person is in when they are undertaking these activities. So there's this absolute recognition. Yes, I am currently embodied, I am residing within this world. I must seek my liberation, which will automatically mean that I will begin to utilize this world, relationships, everything, in a very wonderful and spiritually focused way. So it is my purpose in life, my purpose for doing things that changes, and not the actions per se. I can stop all the actions, But if I haven't changed my heart and my consciousness, then all I am doing is pretending. I'm just shutting everything off externally, but inside you've got this turmoil going on. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says that what is the use of just this external, shutting off of things? That is simply a pretense. One must develop true spiritual vision and see the relationship clearly. This is called prayojana. Sambandha jnana. The nature of the relationship between the living being, the highest truth or God, the material world, existence. What is the nature of the relationship between them? And how do I live in harmony in a proper spiritual understanding? Okay? Thank you very much. Was that okay? What am I chanting? Any requests? Om Hari Om, he says, okay. You know, this form of meditation, sometimes people think meditation is kind of like clearing the mind and removing everything, whereas in reality, true meditation is to place the mind and the body in that which is transcendental. So it is like bathing. You want to remove dirt and contamination from the body. You go into water. In a similar manner, when we chant these sounds, one should think of it as like bathing in this transcendental sound. Hari Om. Thank you very much.